Boom, a 5-star quack for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. Time to break it down. And we're back like we never left. Oregon fans, what's going on? How we living? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, and we got a breaking news episode of the podcast as 5-star wide receiver Gatlin Bair has committed to Oregon. Dan Lanning and the Ducks are as hot as any team in college football. And joining me to break it all down is my guy, Spencer McLaughlin. Spencer, how the heck are you?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Always busy in the weekend times during hoop season, and that's the only way we'd rather be.
Well, I am so glad that you could take some of your time out of your busy schedule to talk some Ducks with me. I was on your show earlier this week, but these Ducks definitely keep us busy. So I'm glad that you could come on and break this one down with me, get some instant reaction. I know that it's been a little bit of a wide variety of reaction from Oregon fans, right? Since this happened, I think you have some fans that are on one side saying, oh man, this is awesome. We're unstoppable. 5-star wide receiver recruit coming in. And then on the other side, you have, well, he's not coming for another 2 years because he is indeed going to be taking a 2-year mission trip. So the Ducks are going to have to wait to get him in Eugene and with the team. But man, what's your reaction to this news?
Yeah, I think it's the caliber of player that Duck fans have come to expect to see commit to Oregon, and that goes for really any position group. You know, I think this is someone who brings a lot of high-level traits, especially his speed. You see there on YouTube if you're watching the leaping ability, the ball skills that he's got as well. But really, his foot speed. He's a track guy, I'm pretty sure, and if memory serves, and he's just someone who I think Oregon has been targeting for a while. Certainly was helped with the departure of Jim Harbaugh and Jay Harbaugh to the NFL because Harbaugh went on his brother's staff. Jay Harbaugh was his primary recruiter at Michigan, so that opened the door for Oregon, and they've been able to walk through that door, and that's a really good thing. You know, even if you look at this as the first recruit for 2026, I mean, how much stronger of a start do you want to get off to? This is an explosive playmaker and someone who, Oregon fans should be excited about, to be sure. I do understand the, fans who say, why, what are we talking about this guy for? I can't get excited for someone who's not going to be around for a couple of years. And that's completely fair. But we always have an eye to the future, because if you don't, you look at what's happening in Washington right now. They didn't recruit at a high level for a couple of years, and then they had a very senior-laden team, and then guess what happened? They don't really have anyone else waiting in the wings. They have a couple guys, but certainly not, one that allows them to compete at a conference championship level as they did a season ago. So, this sort of stuff matters. Recruiting, for 2024 is all done for Oregon, and you're looking at 2025 and 26, and you want to just keep stacking those classes together so that you've always got depth, so that you've always got talent, and I think that's what Gatlin Bair represents here.
Gatlin Bair is a tremendous player that is going to join an Oregon offense that has just been uber productive, I think is the way that we can describe it, Spencer. You got 2,000-yard wide receivers and Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson this past year. Franklin's going to be heading off to the NFL draft, and Tez Johnson wants to run it back one more year after really just kicking things into high gear in the second half of that season in 2023. But I think that with Bair committing to Oregon, the Ducks are getting a really, really solid player. And certainly I see that.
I thought he was going to score a touchdown on that cutback play, and I was about to go berserk. Run that one back again. It's not a fair fight for him to go up against the kids that are trying to guard him in high school. His speed is just ridiculous. But that cutback play, I thought that was about to be a touchdown, and I hadn't watched all of his huddle highlights, and that was a new one for me. Sorry to cut you off, Max, but that was just almost an astonishing. For those listening on podcast, he's down near his own goal line. He catches a tunnel screen, and then the defense kind of takes it away, and he decides to reverse field. He runs back towards his own end zone and all the way to the other side. He ends up picking up like 30, 40 yards on the play. Yeah, here it is right here. So they set up, quick screen to the far side, good cut block, but then he's swarmed by the defense, and then he runs back, and then he jukes back again. He's all the way back to the 5-yard line. Then he veers to the near side, 10, 15, 25, 30, 35, and out to the 40-yard line. Like, you just don't see a lot of athletes like that. Even guys that are 4-star recruits. He's some kind of player.
He is a special player for sure, Spencer. And I think there is obviously an element to his game of just get him the ball and let him run. But this is why I was so excited to make that trip out to Texas, right? And see him in the Adidas All-American Bowl, because we can all acknowledge that Idaho isn't the best football state in the country, right? He's not going up against premier talent week in and week out. And that's not a slight to Idaho. That's just the reality of it, right? But when I saw him in San Antonio, he was holding his own and then some against the best defensive players in the country. He proved that he was not just a speed guy. He was someone who was technically sound. He was a good route runner. He had solid hands. He could create separation. All those things that you want in a wide receiver, that's what you're getting with Gatlin Bair. And I think just an icing on the cake here, I mean, I really enjoyed getting to interview him at the time when he wasn't committed just yet. Because for a guy that had as much mystery and like intrigue around his recruitment, he doesn't do a whole lot of interviews. Just an awesome kid who, had a smile on his face and was just grateful to be going through the process. And I think he also strikes me as a guy who uses his platform to elevate his teammates, which is really, really refreshing to see in today's game.
Yeah, I mean, his quarterback looks like he can make a couple of throws. I don't know who his quarterback is, full disclosure, but somebody's getting him the ball, and I think what you see when you watch his highlights is not a ton of contested catch stuff, but very much a yak guy, and I am reminded when I watch him get off the line of scrimmage and the fluidity with which he moves of Troy Franklin. That's who he looks like to me. And I think Franklin is someone who, when he first got to Oregon, was not a big contested catch guy. It's not, what he did. He was a good route runner. He had good speed. Every now and then they, threw the ball down the field. I remember in that 2021 Alamo Bowl, it was all about, unleash the skinnies with Dante Thornton. And Thornton, of course, transferred to Tennessee. But then Franklin did get unleashed in 2022 once we saw the downfield ability. But Bair is just somebody who you get the ball to in space, as Will Stein likes to say, feed the studs. And I think he's just someone who takes the top off the defense. And you always want to have that sort of guy around the football. And I think was that him throwing a pass or is that him catching the pass?
I think that might have been a throw. Let's see.
I think that was a throw.
Yeah, he's number one.
Yep. Yeah. So he does a little bit of everything. He's got highlights playing defense as well. So I think this is a great get for the Ducks, and anybody that Junior Adams thinks has got potential as a highly rated recruit, that's good enough for me.
Oregon's 2024 class was already historic, Spencer, but they continue to climb the rankings here following the addition of Bair. I like to look at the 247 rankings. They are now up to the number 3 overall class, or not overall. I was going to say overall composite, but they have it overall and composite are two different things. But let's I'll pull that up here on the screen in just a second. They have, the best class keeps getting even better. Pulling it up here, they have the number 3 class on the composite, and it doesn't figure that there's going to be any movement now because all the top 2024 guys are signed. He was the top uncommitted recruit in the country. But uncommitted.
He hasn't technically signed though yet. I think he's going to sign his NLI on National Signing Day, which is next week.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll continue to follow those developments. I guess I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, he's going to sign next week. But he'll be the second 5-star in the class according to 247, along with Elijah Rushing. He did get bumped up to 5-star status on both 247 and on 3 following the All-American Bowl, but can we just talk about the wide receivers in this class, Spencer? Because it is absolutely ridiculous. You have so much talent at the position. You have Jeremiah McLaughlin, who flipped from Ohio State. You have Ryan Pelham, who flipped from USC. And then you have Dylan Gresham from San Jacinto and Jack Ressler as well from Southern California. And if you could even talk about Evan Stewart, the former 5-star from Texas A&M, if you wanted to. Just a truly elite haul for Junior Adams. Again, we understand that Bair won't be here for another 2 years. But oh my God, this is a heck of a haul at receiver.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at that position group and say Oregon is set for the next couple of years. I mean, we don't even know, what the full potential of Jurion Dickey and Kyler Casper are because we haven't seen it yet. I'm really high on both of those guys, and I think they'll be on the two deep. I don't know if they'll be number one, but we'll see what Dickey's able to do. He's certainly the most highly touted recruit in that room. I think maybe even more so than Evan Stewart. That's probably a depending on who you ask sort of discussion, but the narrative around Jurion Dickey coming out of high school was he's got the highest floor of and a high ceiling, but the highest floor of any wide receiver you're going to have in the country. And I think that for Oregon, their receiving haul is really, really good. They've got AJ Pugliano at tight end as well. But you put Bair into the mix, and he's really a 2026 guy. Okay, so I know Oregon is set for 2024 at the wide receiver position. I know they're going to be set at 2025 because they've got all of these guys who will, the majority of whom will probably redshirt for 2024 or something close to it, and then be ready to go in their second year, because then you'll lose Gary Bryant Jr., you'll lose Trayshawn Holden, you'll lose Tez Johnson. This is a position Oregon needs to be loaded up at going forward, and I think that they're doing a good job of acquiring talent from the high school ranks, and that's going to allow them to continue to just have a lot of weapons available for whoever's playing quarterback. And, these are the names that you want Dante Moore to get chemistry with right here, right now, because these are the guys that he's going to throw the ball to in 2025.
So Gatlin Bair is going to be taking that 2-year mission in the Dallas area. And you said a little bit earlier, Spencer, if this is the start of the 2026 class, that's a pretty darn solid start. But, until we see something super official, the Ducks actually already had a start in 2026 with Tony Cumberland, but it looks like he is planning to reclassify. That's what I was told the last time I spoke with him. Granted, that was a while ago, but I'm going to still consider Tony Cumberland a 2026 commit for the Ducks. He is a 5-star defensive lineman out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I am going to be heading out to Arizona next week for the U.S. Army Combine, and then to see some buddies out there. But the Ducks do have a really good start in this 2026 class with Tony Cumberland, but a lot of time between now and signing day for him, obviously. But definitely seems like a fitting first commitment for Dan Lanning and the Ducks, seeing that they are prioritizing that line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean, they always have, right? And that's what you'd expect. Lanning was, I think, the linebackers coach / DC at Georgia, and he was the linebackers coach before he got promoted to defensive coordinator. And, Tosh Lupoy, his recruiting prowess goes back for, the last decade and a half in this sport everywhere that he's been. So I don't think it's any surprise, and I think it's just representative of the priorities that Dan Lanning has when he's building a roster. He wants to be dominant up front, certainly along the offensive line, but specifically along the defensive line, because that's what he came to know at Georgia, right? He went to a place and dominated with a front four that featured guys like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Travion Walker, who was the number 1 overall pick for the Jags. Nakobe Dean at the second level. Like, they just had a bunch of dudes. They had a bunch of dudes all over the place in that front seven, and that's what Dan Lanning wants his team to look like defensively every single year, and I think that's what Oregon fans should expect.
Talking with my guy, Spencer McLaughlin, host of Locked On Ducks and Locked On College Football. He has a new Twitter that is at @SMcLaughlinCFB, so wanted to make sure to plug that. Let's talk a little bit more about Bair and then talk about what's next, Spencer, more specifically the wide receiver room in Eugene as it stands, because I want to talk a little bit more about Dickey and Casper. It is pretty crazy to get caught up maybe in the 2024 recruiting class and the guys that they're bringing in at that position. When you look at it through the lens of, oh yeah, they actually have Jurion Dickey, a former 5-star guy, and Kyler Casper, who reclassified from 23 to 22 and was a total red zone, end zone mismatch kind of guy, physical freak, but we haven't seen a whole lot from either of them. So it's just interesting when you look at it, because you still have these weapons that are already in Eugene and have been with the team, but maybe we're going to see some of these guys from the 24 class, Jeremiah McClellan, Ryan Pelham, Dylan Gresham, like they're all already enrolled with the Ducks. So maybe we'll see some of those guys, push some of the people that have already been around. And that's really your job as a coaching staff. Get those guys here, get them developed and rolling, and then you hit the recruiting trail again and find guys that can beat them out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to see what happens with Dickey and Casper, just because guys that are that talented and that highly recruited rarely are waiting until year 3 to have meaningful playing time. And I mean, Casper reclassified, I know, and maybe he, views that first redshirt season as I didn't expect to do anything. I'm not, seeing that as, a lost opportunity or anything. But if Casper is again buried on the depth chart, I mean, maybe he's got a great relationship with Junior Adams and the staff and wants to stay with Oregon and, be one of the premier guys in 2025. But, with Gary Bryant Jr. and Trayshawn Holden there, I don't know if Casper is going to make a jump on the depth chart. I haven't seen anything to indicate that that's the case. He's come in mop-up duty, hasn't really been asked to do a ton. So I think that for Oregon, the receiver room is good no matter what. I'm just curious what happens with individual guys. Dickey's one of the most hyped receiver prospects in the history of Oregon football, quite frankly. He's the second highest rated wide receiver commit ever, second only to Cameron Colvin. But Cameron Colvin, his career was okay. Like, he was a good player, but he wasn't anything unbelievably spectacular. Troy Franklin, who's the next highest rated receiver recruit ever, he was spectacular and had one of the best seasons and careers any Oregon wide receiver has ever had in the history of the program. So I think for Oregon, their depth is going to be there and the talent's going to be there, but it's going to be a competitive battle because Jeremiah McClellan is a really talented guy, and Ryan Pelham. Now, Pelham's got a little bit of a different skill set because he's on the smaller side. I don't think he projects necessarily as an X receiver. I think he's more, a Tez Johnson type. But I think that for Kyler Casper, he, fits the mold. 6'4", 6'5", long strides, great leaping ability, good ball skills. I thought he should have gotten a touchdown in the Portland State game. I thought the officials took that away from him. But the potential is there. We've seen it in the spring game. We've seen it in mop-up duty here and there. It just hasn't materialized for him to move up the depth chart. So I wonder if he ever works his way into the fold. And I wonder how Jurion Dickey works his way into the fold as well.
So now we can kind of... not clean our hands, but put a nice little bow on the 2024 class. Now that Gatlin Bair, I guess once he officially signs, right? But for all intents and purposes, 2024 is wrapped up. We talked recently about how 2025 is on the clock, and Spencer, now that's what's next for Oregon are these 2025 guys, and they're in the midst of their second junior day. They had a junior day last weekend, but I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, Spencer, the visitor list. But this is one of the very, very best collections of talent I've seen Oregon host in one weekend in the 6 years that I've been covering this team. Like, it is truly that crazy of a weekend. You got two guys inside the top 10, with DJ Pickett being one of them in this 2025 recruiting class, a top guy out of Florida. I am complete. Oh, Decorian Moore is the other one, the 5-star LSU wide receiver commit. Both those guys are on campus. You got, I think I counted it, 9 top 150 guys nationally that are also on campus. So I think right now, if I had to talk about maybe a next to commit for Oregon, I would go with Deshaun Brame from Derby, Kansas, a 6'6" tight end who is in Eugene right now. And I think that this Bear commitment comes at an interesting time because I was maybe thinking it was going to be Brame first. So now we're just looking at what's next, but it all kind of lines up. I was talking yesterday on the pod. It seems like a dam is about to break for the Ducks on the recruiting trail, specifically as it pertains to 2025. So now with Bear in the fold, I think all eyes are on Deshaun Brame.
Yeah, and I think for 2025, it's hard at this stage to have a great feel for, where the priorities need to be because you don't know who's going to leave. You're going to have transfer portal departures. You're going to have guys that you could have seen playing in 2025 in a big way decide to leave. Look at Cole Martin, for instance. I think he would have been a prime candidate to play nickel for the Ducks this year They wanted Brandon Johnson from Duke instead, and Martin didn't want to be a number 2, so he goes to ASU, where he's probably a starting player on that defense because we know he's supremely talented. And I think they're just, that's just one example. Dante Dowdell, nobody saw that one coming, or Keith Brown once upon a time. You can't always know. So I think the objective for Oregon in 2025 in the interim, until you have a good idea of what to do there, and of course the coaching staff knows better than we do, is understand that you just want to go get talent wherever you can find it. Doesn't matter the position, doesn't matter the how many guys you got here and there or anything like that. Just go get the most talented players that you can find, and kind of establish a good recruiting base to make yourself attractive to the more high profile guys that will hold off their commitments until the summer.
And I think it's an interesting point, because if you get a guy like Brame in the fold early, one of the best tight ends in the country, I think he's a top 10 tight end in the 25 class. If you get some of those high profile guys in the fold early, like him, like Dallas Wilson, the receiver, Achilles Smith Jr., the quarterback, it gives you leverage and the ability to be selective with some guys that you also have recruiting in the 2025 class. So I think Oregon's in a really good spot with a lot of 2025 guys here now that we're in this big weekend. And I think they're going to continue to ascend the rankings with maybe some commitments coming here in the near future. So I put Cooper Perry as one of my next guys, the 2025 wide receiver out of Arizona. But I think Brame is maybe a little bit more likely to hop in the fold. So we'll see what's next for Oregon. But boy, it's a huge weekend, and to have Bair pop without even being a visitor, I think it just speaks that there's bigger things on the minds of this Oregon coaching staff, Spencer.
Yeah, and there was a tweet that went out. I can't remember if I think it was from you talking to a recruit in the 2025 or 6 cycle down somewhere south. It might have been someone else. It might have been you. But anyway, that he was looking at a couple other schools down in the southeastern footprint because, of course, and then he was asked about Oregon, and he basically said, well, of course I'd want to go to Oregon. Like, it's Oregon. So it was you. Was it Jarraylen McCoy, the 5-star defensive lineman out of the state of Mississippi? I think that brand power for Oregon remains very, very strong and very, very defined nationally, especially with Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy on staff. So I think the Ducks are going to continue to bring in high-level talent at every position they can. And I think they're really, really capable of doing so, especially on defense.
Absolutely. We're waiting for that first defensive commit for the Ducks in the 2025 class. All 4 commits so far are on offense, but Gatlin Bair is going to be playing his college football in Eugene once he wraps up his trip. And this is a perfect end to the 2024 class for the Ducks. History made, not even in the making, history made for the Ducks. Spencer, appreciate you hopping on the show today, my guy. Always great to see you. But before we get you out of here, let the people know where they can find you and everything you got going on.
Yeah, I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlinCFB. I host Locked On Ducks and the newly minted Locked On College Football show for the last couple of weeks and going forward, of course, on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, Monday through Friday, all year round, talking the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. And Max, it's always fun to drop by, my guy.
Absolutely, absolutely. So make sure you guys tap in with Spencer. Does a lot of awesome stuff. If you want to find more of me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at mtorresports. Subscribe to my YouTube channel at Oregon Football Max Torres. Read me at ducksdigest.com and share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. But until next time, thank you so much for listening.